Hey, I'm Lauren. This is Bizarre Gardening Accident, where I talk about makeup, food, and clothes. Today it's makeup, and I'm going to go through my Glowy foundation routine for dry skin. So if that sounds like something that would be helpful to you, stick around. Let's get into it. So I think most people's foundation routine starts with skincare, and skincare is really important because if you prep your skin well, your makeup is going to look better. Makeup can even out skin tone. It's not going to do anything about texture though, and texture is always going to be noticeable, and that's where skincare comes in. So if you really want to smooth out the texture of your skin, makeup's not going to do that for you, but skincare will. So for me, my skincare routine looks like a chemical exfoliant, a vitamin C serum, a hyaluronic acid serum, a moisturizer, and sunscreen. Sunscreen is, I kind of count it as the first step in my foundation routine or the last step in my skincare routine. Depends on how you look at it. But for these purposes, because I think it's really important to wear an SPF every day, I want to show myself putting on the sunscreen. I use a tinted mineral sunscreen because chemical sunscreens break me out. If chemical sunscreens are not an issue for you, I'm super jealous because most of them are the finish of them is a lot nicer, I think, than mineral sunscreens. However, this Supergoop 100% mineral matte sunscreen is actually really great. Even on my dry skin, it plays well under all of my complexion products. I only have, I think, 5 or 6 foundations, but it works under all of the foundations that I do have. So typically, this is not one I have to worry about if I do get a new complexion product. I just haven't gotten a new complexion product that this sunscreen didn't work under. It's also very important that a mineral sunscreen is tinted, because if it's not, it's definitely going to leave a white cast. So tinted is a big factor for me. And it takes quite a lot of rubbing to really get it to sink in, so it'll take a minute. Because this sunscreen is matte, I find that I do need another moisturizer, so I kind of sandwich my SPF in between my day moisturizer, SPF, and then I put another small layer of moisturizer over that. Because this is matte, so it does kind of kick up any flakes that I might have or cling to any dry patches. So to get rid of that, I put another small layer of moisturizer over my sunscreen. And for that step, I use the Perlice Matcha Green Tea Antioxidant Priming Moisturizer. This is the only place in my routine where I use this moisturizer, which is not to say that it's a bad moisturizer. I just have a very specific place in my routine for it, and it's right after sunscreen. So if you are not as dry as I am, then this might be a step you could skip altogether. Not everybody needs this. I don't need it every single day. Most of the time I do, but you don't. This is optional depending on your skin type. So now we're on to the glowy base step. The reason that I don't say primer here is because to me, primer implies that it's increasing the wear time of your makeup. And these products might do that. That's just not something that I need out of the product, so it's not something that I tend to pay attention to, whether a primer makes my makeup last longer. My make my makeup last longer step is my setting spray step, so I care much more about my setting spray working effectively at keeping my makeup on than I do my primer keeping my makeup on. What I want out of a primer is for the primer to give me a nice glowy base to put my foundation on top of, and my favorite product for that is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter for a Superstar Youth Glow. I wish Charlotte Tilbury would come the fuck on with that name, because it's a bit much. Not that there's anything wrong with being extra, because there certainly isn't. I love extra, just this is a bit much. However, it's a great product. I super love it, especially for this glowy base step. So I start with it on the high points of my cheekbones and in the center of my forehead and down my nose. But then I kind of just blend it everywhere. I tend not to put it on my chin. If I do get oily, which I don't typically, but if I'm going to get oily in a place, it's on my chin. So I tend not to put any hydrating products and I just don't want to draw attention to my chin. Nothing really sits right on my chin, so I just kind of tend to leave it alone, like a less is more kind of approach for that. So I put the Hollywood Flawless Filter all over for a Superstar Youth Glow or as a glowy base. I have other products in my collection that I really like. The Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter is my favorite product for this glowy base step, but there are other things that are super great, like the MAC Strobe Cream. I love the Becca Backlight Priming Filter is one of my favorite glowy base products, and the L'Oreal Luminous Serum Skin Tint is actually very close to the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter for a Superstar Youth Glow. I wouldn't go so far as to call the L'Oreal a drugstore dupe for the Charlotte Tilbury, but it's pretty damn close. All right, so I've got my glowy base on. Now I'm going to take my foundation, which is L'Oreal Pro Glow. Make sure that your foundation is marketed as having the finish that you want out of a foundation. If you want glowy skin, don't use a matte foundation. You can get a matte foundation to glow with the right amount of products, but it's easier if you just start with something that's going to give you the effect that you want. So glow is right in the name of this one. So my foundation application method is mainly blending in with my hands and then touching that up with a sponge in any places that need some extra love in terms of blending. I use a light layer of foundation because I have the great good fortune of having pretty decent skin, so I don't need or want a ton of coverage. This is probably a light to medium coverage foundation, I would say. And I'm just going to use up what's on the back of my hand here. Especially for dry skin, I find that hand application for foundation is really, really great. The heat of your fingers definitely helps the product meld, sink into, become one with your skin rather than just sitting on top and exacerbating dry patches or flakes or anything like that. So I do the majority of the heavy lifting with my hands, and then now I'm going to touch it up with my sponge. I'm going to take my little hand mirror here and get close up, make sure I'm blending everything. Between my eyebrows, my foundation tends to like bunch up there, so that's a place where that's a place where I really pay attention to the blending. I also have just frankly a shitload of hair along my jawline. Like, calling it peach fuzz would be making it sound a lot more delicate than it is, but fine, we'll call it peach fuzz. I got a shitload of it. Foundation sticks in it. So I have to be sure to blend really well around my jawline. But yeah, I'm just going over this with a damp sponge. This is the e.l.f. sponge, and I prefer it to any other sponge that I've ever tried, truly. And I've got the original Beauty Blender. I used Real Techniques for years. I've used an EcoTools sponge. I've used the Flower Beauty sponge, all kind of sponges. The e.l.f. one, absolutely hands down my favorite. All right. So we got that blended in. Now it is time for concealer. I use two separate concealers for my under eyes and spot concealing. You can use one. If you are going to use one concealer, I would suggest the shade match your skin tone exactly rather than being a couple of shades lighter. A couple of shades lighter concealer is great for your under eyes, but if you put a concealer that's a couple of shades lighter on your blemishes, it's going to highlight, the same way it does under your eyes, that blemish. So if you want one product to do double duty, then I would suggest having a shade that matches your skin tone exactly. Another thing that you have to consider with concealer, especially if you have dry skin, is the finish. I like a glowier concealer for my under eye and a more matte concealer for spot concealing. I tend to get dry under my eyes, so I like a lighter, thinner, more emollient type product under my eyes. And despite the fact that the rest of my base is glowy, a matte spot concealer, again, does not highlight a thing that you're trying to hide. A matte finish will make it blend more into your skin, even if you're doing a glowy base. So a matte spot concealer, God, hair, I would recommend. Like I said, I do use 2 separate products for this because I like different finishes in different places. I want a glowier, thinner, lighter finish under my eyes, and I want a thicker, heavier matte finish to hide any spots. So I'm going to start with my under eyes, and I'll take a little dot here, and then I am going to take my little Royal Langnickel angled precision brush, and I'm going to kind of spread that around and get it to where I want it to be. The reason that I don't go in with a sponge initially for my under eye concealer is that I use a tiny amount of product as it is, and so I don't want any of that product to disappear into the sponge. Like, I don't want the sponge to absorb the product because I'm already not using a lot. So I like to spread it around with a brush so that it's not absorbed by the sponge. And then just like my face, I'll go back in with the sponge and kind of touch it up. All right, that looks good. Now I'm gonna take my little flat concealer brush from Shiseido, and I gotta get my close-up mirror for this. I'm using the Kevyn Aucoin Sensual Skin Enhancer, and mine is an SX05. This is definitely full coverage concealer. You do not need a lot. I only used a tiny bit, and I'm gonna put it, I've got some blemishes that have been healed now for quite a while, but the discoloration remains. So I've just got a few little spots that I want to cover up there with that. So I'm just kind of dotting it on with this concealer brush, and then I'm going to feather the edges out. And then just pat with my finger. Patting with my finger is my favorite way to apply concealer. I think it preserves more of the coverage. And again, the warmth of your fingers just really helps spread out the product. I'm a big fan of hands for base products. All right, so now I'm gonna set. Despite the fact that I have dry skin, I still always set my makeup. And the reason that I always set my makeup is because it helps prevent transfer. It also keeps my foundation from moving around after I put other products on top of it. So like I'm gonna go in with a powder blush, a powder bronzer, a powder highlight, and I find that those things apply and blend better on powdered skin. Because I have dry skin, I don't need a ton of powder. So definitely be cognizant of the amount of powder that you're putting on. Like, this is how much I'm gonna use for both of my under eyes. So I'm just going to sweep that on. And then I'm going to take a bigger brush and do the rest of my face. And I'm dipping into the cap. It has about that much. I don't know if you can see. I do not have a super great autofocus camera. So when I hold things up to my face, I never can tell if you can see them or not. I feel like my daughter has been playing in my makeup brushes because this brush seems dark for powder. I'll use a different one. God, she probably has been playing in my makeup. Okay, big powder brush. I'm going to get just a little bit more on this big brush and kind of get it all over the brush, but not add a ton. I just want a little bit all over the place like that. So then I'm going to pat. And now I'll go in and sweep. And so yeah, I use as little powder as I can get away with, so that I don't end up looking cakey and dry. However, this Hourglass powder, the Veil Translucent Setting Powder, is the best powder I've ever used for dry skin. You could just really apply the shit out of it and still not dry yourself out, I think. This is one of the few powders I've ever come across that will allow me to set my makeup, but also not completely get rid of the glow that I put down with the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter for Superstar Youth Glow. and also the Pro Glow foundation. So there's, you know, it definitely preserves the glow, which is always what I'm after. So this is another preserve the glow step. Pretty much all my steps are preserve the glow steps. This is the Pixie Glow Mist. I'm going to spray this all over. I always apply this after powder to take down any powderiness that might be left over. Again, with the Hourglass powder, that doesn't really happen. But this is just an extra glowy step that is, again, optional. If your skin is not as dry as mine, or you prefer a less glowy finish, feel free to skip this, but I love this step. And I'm going to pat this in with my sponge. I think that patting the skin mists in with my sponge really, really helps the makeup melt with my skin and become fairly undetectable on the surface of my skin. I mean, look, when you get this close up with a mirror, you're always going to be able to see your makeup. So, by the way, if you're new to this, do not be discouraged by that. Everyone can see their foundation when they hold a mirror an inch from their nose. That's normal. But I do find patting sprays in with the sponge really, really kind of helps everything become a bit more undetectable on my skin. All right, now on to colored complexion products. So I know that this is maybe technically not part of foundation, but I did want to include it because it's generally part of complexion. So I'm using my Wet n Wild Sunset Striptease bronzer that has definitely seen better days, but this is the bronzer that made me start using bronzer, so I like it a lot. It's got a little bit of sheen, nothing crazy, definitely not glitter, just a little bit of glow that I think is really nice, especially for the summertime. Generally, I prefer products that have a little bit of glow in them. Definitely, I like my bronzer too. God, I'm getting my hair everywhere. I really should probably just wear a headband. All right, bronzer is applied, and I put it on with my e.l.f. Flawless Face Brush. e.l.f. makes such great brushes. Like, I don't think I've come across an e.l.f. brush that I hated. Every one that I've ever bought, I really love. Now for blush, I'm going to use MAC Dolly Mix. Again, this is one of those that has a slight bit of sheen. Definitely nothing approaching glitter, just a little bit of sheen. I love this blush. And I'm gonna, for blush placement, I prefer higher up on my cheekbone and then swept back so that it gives my face kind of like a lifted effect. And I kind of don't know how long it has not been recording, so I tend to like to over apply blush at this stage and then tone it down a little bit in my last step. I know that that seems kind of silly, like just apply the amount of blush that you want right now, but it's part of my process to put on just a little bit too much. So that's a little bit too much MAC Dolly Mix, and I did not get out a highlighter, so hold please. I wanted a pink toned highlighter today. I think I'm gonna wear pink lipstick, and I've obviously got some very pink blush on. So I'm using the Dior Skin Nude Air Luminizer in shade 2. It looks like this. It's definitely a pinky highlighter, and I'm gonna use my Real Techniques setting brush and just apply that to the very tops of my cheekbones and around on my temple. I am not a nose or forehead or chin highlight type of bitch, just on my cheekbones. All right, now on to my last, and this is probably the most important step, and this is finishing powder, which is not the same thing as setting powder. Setting powder is going to absorb excess oil, keep your foundation from moving around, help prevent transfer, generally keep your base products in place. Finishing powder will not do any of that. What it will do is blur pores, blur lines. impart some glow if you buy a glowy setting powder. If you get a finishing powder. There are matte finishing powders. The one that I'm going to use is not one of them, but they do exist. So if you want something that is going to blur pores, blur fine lines, but be matte, look for a matte finishing powder. If you want one that's going to give you a glow, look for a glowy finishing powder. I like the Hourglass ambient lighting powders for finishing powder. That's what I'm using right now on this big fluffy brush. And I just sweep it all over. So yeah, finishing powders will blur your pores, blur lines, give you a glow if you use a glowy one. And for me, they blend out the rest of my colored cheek products and tone them down if necessary, and just generally make, again, my makeup a bit more undetectable on the surface of my skin. I love the ambient lighting powders. I've used, I think, 3 shades of them. The shade that I'm using today is Luminous Light, and that is definitely the shade that I think that works best for my skin tone. Hourglass says that any person with any skin tone can use any of their powders. I don't see how that's possible. Truly, I don't. If you look at the shade Ethereal Light, it is straight out white in the pan. And look, I know that in the pan and on your face are 2 different things. Like, they're not... I just do not believe Hourglass when they say that. They need to make deeper shades so that people with deeper skin tones can use this product, because it's an excellent product and I love it, but I hate talking about it knowing that, like, pretty much any dark skinned person who happens to watch this video is not going to be able to use Hourglass ambient lighting powders. That's obnoxious. So step it up, Hourglass. But anyway, big fluffy brush. We're sweeping it all over, just blending. All of that. Okay, since this video is only about complexion, I'm going to hop off camera really quick and finish the rest of my makeup, which will be brows, eyes, lips, and come back with the rest of my makeup done and do the very, very last step. So see you in a second. Okay, so I am back with the rest of my makeup done. The winged liner took, frankly, an inordinate amount of time, and it's still not even, so I love that journey for me. Winged liner is a journey for me. Of course, I have lipstick all over my teeth. Winged liner is a journey for me. I've been working on it for ages, and I'm determined to get better at it. Today is not the best day, but it's fine. Back with lipstick. So now my last skin step. This is the get my makeup to stay in place step for me. That's, again, not primer. That's where I want my glow to come from. This is how I get my makeup to stay, and this is the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray. And I think they make about 3 different versions of this now. Like 2 oily skin versions, the De-Slick, and also a mattifying one. And then I think a glowy one, and then just the regular one. I have just the regular one, which works really well for my skin. When I'm out of it though, I might try the glowy one. And I do the same thing that I did with the Pixie Glow Mist, and I pat it in with my sponge. Again, I find that this just really helps blend, meld everything together, and really make it one with your skin. So since this video is focused all about skin, I want to kind of make a disclaimer about lighting and how that affects how your skin looks, about other influencers, just a general disclaimer. Number 1, almost every photograph that you see on Instagram is retouched or edited in some way. So if you see a person's skin on Instagram, chances are most of the imperfections have been edited out or filtered or blurred or something to that effect. There are very few people out there who are just posting their unretouched skin. So what I'm saying is that's not the measure that you should be using for your skin. First of all, you're a different person, and skin is so deeply personal that it's going to vary widely what works and what doesn't from person to person. So just because something works for, you know, your favorite beauty guru or whatever, doesn't mean it'll work for you, and that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or what you're doing or your technique or any of that. Different things work for different people. And I think part of the fun of all of this is figuring out what works for you. That can get a little expensive if you're looking for a very specific thing, but you know, the more you practice, the more you know, the more idea you have of what you need in a product. So just take everything that you see on Instagram with a grain of salt. Same for YouTube. There are some beauty gurus out there who are using filters on their videos, which I think is frankly super fucked up. But just don't compare your skin to other people's skin. It's apples to oranges at best, and it's not going to serve you, and it's probably not going to help you find the thing that you're looking for. So just, that's one note. A note about my own personal lighting setup. I would love to be able to film everything in natural light, but I have a 4-year-old daughter, which means that the times that I can film are pretty limited. So also, our house doesn't get a ton of natural light. Our house sits on a lot that's very wooded. We have a lot of trees around the house. Excuse me, my nose is running. We have a lot of trees around the house, which just means not a ton of natural light even makes it inside my house. So I have lighting that I film with because I wouldn't be able to film otherwise. Now, because this is a skin-focused video, what I do want to do is dim some of that lighting and get really close up to the camera so that you can see what my skin looks like right this second, just after I've gotten my makeup done, and have an idea of like what real close-up skin looks like is, I don't want to say supposed to look like, but I just want to give you a real life idea. And then I'll also go outside and probably film with my phone just in regular natural daylight so you can see what this looks like in regular natural daylight, which is how most people will be wearing their makeup. So it's really important that you do your makeup for the sort of lighting that you're going to be in most of the time. And for most people, that's just like regular daylight, man. So I'm going to go outside and show you what it looks like in regular daylight. And I think that's all of the disc. Oh yeah, and I'll come back at the end of the night and show you how it wore through the day. So yeah, I've got a couple of updates that I'm going to make, and I'll see you in a minute for those. This camera lens doesn't zoom, so I'm going to have to physically get much closer to the camera. So I'm going to dim the lights and get in real tight so you can see. There we go. Yeah. So that is not super flattering for me. But I just, that's what it looks like in dim lights. You have like tons of acne scarring all down here. And makeup's just never gonna get rid of that texture. So like, here's when I turn the lights up. Yeah, see how much nicer things look? So yeah, down low skin. And that's what it looks like. I'm not trying to like blow you out or mislead you with studio lighting or anything, but I am gonna use studio lighting because that is just how my house is. Okay, so I'm outside, which is perhaps why you can hear all the crazy bugs. But yeah, this is what my skin looks like up close in natural lighting. Also, my chest has been itching, so that's why that's red. I've been scratching. Yes, very glowing. Cool. Okay, it is the end of the day. I haven't touched my makeup all day, and this is what it looks like. I'm a little flaky. That might be lunch, I don't know. That's it. That's my Glowy foundation routine for dry skin. Some kind of like standout steps that I think really help me are a second layer of moisturizer after my SPF, the Glowy base for sure, and the ambient lighting powder, the finishing powder. Those three things I think are kind of really the key for getting all of the glow that I like in my skin. Thanks so much for watching. If this sort of content seems helpful to you or up your alley, please stick around because I'm going to make more videos. This is my first one and I'm having a really good time doing it. So please consider subscribing. I know I'm kind of an unknown quantity at this point. It's ballsy to ask someone to subscribe after one video, but you know, maybe I'm your cup of tea. I hope so. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.